Welcome to the Way We Capture podcast. This is a podcast that is dedicated to photography and aims to provide guidance and support to individuals looking to improve their photography skills. The podcast focuses on self-development and also discusses the future of technology and image processing. Through the podcast, listeners can learn about various techniques, tools, and resources to enhance their creativity and productivity. The podcast also explores the creative process behind capturing stunning photographs and how to effectively communicate through photography and storytelling. This week's guest is Jack Wardale. Jack is a PhD student in psychology, a content creator, and a dear friend of mine. So let's dive deep into this conversation we had. Holy crap, dude. I am super excited. I can't even...
Good. I'm excited to chat. Yeah, no, it's been a while.
It's been a minute,
so
man.
This will be
It's been a minute.
too long for sure.
Way too long. Absolutely. So, welcome to the Way We Capture podcast. This is the third guest I've had on the podcast. So, everyone, this is Jack Wardale. This is the man. He helped me out so much at the beginning of my creator story. So, I met Jack early on some Twitter Spaces, but I'll let Jack kind of describe who he is in his own words, because I just did.
Okay, no pressure. Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Wardale. I am currently entering my 5th year as a psychology PhD student, but I also have a wonderful passion, which is content creation. I have been doing it for, going on 6 years now, and it's really kind of manifested into not only content creation, but also brand strategy and consultant as well. And obviously, Zach, we met in the NFT days, and that was also a little side project that I kind of engaged with. Obviously, the market, the less we talk about that right now, the better. But at one time, it was alive and well, and we were all kind of thriving together in kind of a micro community that we'd kind of created together.
Absolutely, man. It was a blessing to meet you. It was a blessing in disguise. You helped my mindset. You helped me overcome imposter syndrome. So this is kind of me repaying some debt back to you in a way by getting you on here and just having a great little chat.
I appreciate it.
But man, you look healthy. I just want to put that out there. You look good. So
thank you, mate.
Hopefully it's all the poetry. No.
Yeah, it's something, man. It's something. Maybe it's not eating due to how much I got on my plate right now, but I appreciate it.
You're what are you this year? You're 28 this year?
I'm 28 right now. I'll be turning 29
right okay.
in December.
29. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're near the end of your 20s, dude. You got a lot going on. So I can only imagine.
Don't remind me.
Let's not remind you, but it's just kind of a testament to your journey since you were playing soccer at Seton Hill.
Yes, many moons ago now. It's crazy.
So I want to start into pretty much your thing, at least from my perspective, your thing, which is empathy and psychology. This was always like the standing point of who is Jack Wardale. Jack Wardale is an empath, like by crazy means, with like a little bit of a scientific background in psychology. So Jack, I have this question crafted for you that I've been super excited to ask. So your background in psychology and being an empath are very intriguing. That's kind of what people see you as on the outside, especially those who know you from the Twitter Space days back in the day. How has your empathetic nature influenced your approach to psychology and vice versa?
I think they've kind of grown hand in hand. You know, naturally, as you mentioned, I've kind of always had that empathic bone in my body, and I think that due care and responsibility for others really led me down the psychology route. But since I've been kind of engaging with my research at the graduate level, which is concerning gratitude, it's really kind of come full circle, and it's allowed me to really educate people on not just the essence of empathy, but why it's so good for you, and to have that kind of ammunition at the ready to tell people you should be good to one another, but actually here's why, and actually can be beneficial not only for yourself but those around you. I think has just provided that fuel to the fire that's enabled me to kind of really disseminate and advocate for empathy, because I think the world needs it. You know, I think we're in a place where we can easily go inside ourselves with regards to isolation. You know, COVID obviously didn't help at all. But since we've kind of come out of that process, I feel that I think we have a responsibility, I really do, to help other people and to show empathy, even when it might not appear we should or need to do so. I think that's when it really counts. So if I can be that guy to tell you to kind of reach out a little bit more to those around you and provide more empathy, then please let me be that guy, because I think the world needs it.
Do you have like any story about how empathy played this huge role in your development with either your academic work that you're, pursuing, or any of the personal life stuff?
Gosh, I think they're just innumerable, and I think something that is cool about empathy is it's often the byproduct of reciprocity as well, and not that that's the reason why we do it. It's not a transactional feat by any means, but you just never know when it's going to come back around, and you can attribute that to kind of this generalized sense of karma or whatever. But I really think just putting that best foot forward and putting that loving and empathic energy out into the world, I think it pays dividends. And you may not see it immediately, but again, the fact that you've brought me on and the first thing you said is, you knew me as this kind of empathic person.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, that's a gift in of itself, if I can provide that gift to others. So I think there's no real instance, I think, that comes to mind straight away, but I'd say the trajectory of my life has been a byproduct of the empathy that I've shown others, and certainly the success that I've been able to afford myself through my, endeavors, whether it be academically or creatively, I think has been due, hopefully, to the empathy that I've shown others and me going above and beyond myself to help those around me in whatever setting that is.
So you always stood out to me, and beautifully said, that whole little segment. I loved it. That is at your essence, that is who you are, right? And you stood out to me in the very beginning. You were super welcoming. You're always wanting to listen to people's stories and truly listen, not just, oh, okay, well, here's what you should do. No, you understood people and their problems at such a foundational core, and that stood out to me. Like I said that 3 times. It's crazy. We always just remember how people treat us, not necessarily like what was said or anything like that. Like, I can't remember those Twitter spaces years ago or the DMs we had, but I do remember how you made me feel. And I know tons of other people in that space who they might not still be around on Twitter or X just because of the direction of the platform, but I think there's something to be said about the majority of people and how they choose not to be nice or empathetic because they feel like nice people just get shat on. So you flip that whole thing on its head, and I love that.
Yeah, I think, life's too short, right? And I hear there's a cat meowing in the background, so hopefully that's not getting picked up too heavily. No. But, I feel that there's a certain opportunity for us to really go above and beyond ourselves, because if we don't do it, who will?
Yeah.
And I think we have this chronic problem in society where we look down the line and we go, well, who's going to step up? And I think we need to do a better job of introspecting ourselves and going, well, why can't that be me? Why can't I be the person that extends that hand? And obviously, psychologically speaking, there is the phenomenon of diffusion of responsibility. We sometimes feel that, there's someone more educated than us or more inclined to help than us. But I like you said, I kind of try and flip that narrative on its head. And it's like, but if I don't at least volunteer, if I don't rise to that challenge, then who else will? And if I can fill that void, then I'm more than happy to do that. And I think that it does come at a cost to people. I understand our energy is finite, but I'd rather use my energy for the betterment of others than, I guess, myself in a weird way. And maybe you can do both. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think that I've been able to help myself by helping others, because again, you don't know when it's going to come back to you. And again, not that that's why we do it, but there's an element of people remember how you made them feel. And I think that can afford you opportunities in places that you don't always anticipate.
It's beautifully said, because you never know what's going to come back around. Don't burn bridges, stuff like that. Those are lessons that people usually don't learn until too late in life, to where they couldn't, mold their potential into this great thing and then actually realize their dream future in a way. So I think it just starts with being a good person, and obviously that's who you are.
I try.
Yeah,
I try.
that's who you try to be at least. We don't know what goes on.
Definitely. It's always the aspiration, I think.
So I got another question for you. We got a few, but I'll go over this next one. So
Sure.
creativity and psychology, right? Psychology being what you study, creativity being who you are, who most of us are in this generation. So you have a background in creativity and psychology. How do these two aspects intersect in your life and work? Are there specific psychological principles that have informed your creative projects, such as your YouTube videos or wedding videography?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I first, kind of went down this road of psychology, and I was doing the creative stuff on the side and still am, they kind of felt too disparate to connect. I was thinking, well, the psychology is very logically focused. I was doing my research, and then you have this creative endeavor, video production, etc. And it really evolved over time. I realized that the connection, or the point of, the meeting, was that not only could I make a good video, I could tell people why it would engage an audience. And I think when you start drifting into kind of marketing and people are trying to convert for consumers, etc., they don't just want a flashy product. I mean, it's great, it helps, especially if their product before that was lesser than, but they really want to know, why does it work? Why is it going to work? And that was really where I was able to accidentally fall into this role of a brand consultant and say, well, hey, look, this video is cool, but this is why it's going to engage an audience. And I think when our attention span in this generation is already so finite and minimal, you need everything that you can get to try and engage an audience. And if I can come at it from a psychological angle and say, hey, listen, I think if you do it like this, this is going to engage the audience because of this psychological underlying principle, then ultimately the businesses make more money, they convert their prospective consumer into a consumer, and it's a win all round, because then the consumers can obviously identify and connect with that product. So in terms of specifics, I think the biggest one is thinking about how to stop the scroll, right? It's that initial off the bat, we're scrolling for hours a day. How do we actually stop the scroll? And there's a phenomenon in psychology called the psychological refractory period. It is a very small window where if we get it right, we can kind of activate and we can kind of get people to stall a little bit. It's kind of, and once you get someone to stall, if what comes out of it after it, is valuable, then maybe you can get them to stick around for a little while longer. So if you've ever seen a video where, for example, the screen shakes or something very minimal happens, like there's a flash, like Carl Shakur, who's a very big creator, he does this thing where he clicks and he appears on the screen. And he does it for every one of his videos. And what he's doing is he's tapping into the psychological refractory period so that people momentarily stall because they're like, did he just appear? And then by that time, he's already started talking, and then they're stuck. And then they just stay with the video, and then he gets that added engagement. Whereas a lot of the time, the videos don't get pushed through the algorithm because you don't get that initial stop. So that's just one of the many techniques or the many psychological phenomenon that I kind of tap into when I'm consulting for clients to make sure that their video is not only seen, but then it sticks, and then, they carry on watching the video.
It's just amazing, consumer science at this point.
It is. It really is, for sure.
It's one of those things that, I started doing some short form content, and I was just like, people were like, you keep popping up on my screen. I was like, well, you probably watched the video like tons of times, so it's going to push my content towards you. But I mean, whatever the reason people engage with us, like, we always want it to be good, but sometimes it's not. So I think people take advantage of that without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think you've got to think about how the algorithm works and work backwards, right? So if we know that the algorithm is going to push based on metrics such as bookmarks or shares, create the content and curate the content that's going to lend itself to doing those two things. So whenever I dilute content creation to a lot of personal brands, it's like you either have to entertain or educate. If you do one of those right, people will share it, they'll bookmark it, they'll comment, they'll like it, right? And I think what I'm seeing in the industry right now is a lot of educational content is doing even better than entertainment, because people will bookmark that video to come back to it And I don't know how honest I am about coming back to it, but I'll still bookmark it in that moment to be like, I'm going to come back to it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why a lot of educational content is winning right now. You know, I have one retainer client where we do a lot of kind of more of the entertainment stuff. And we shifted gears last week. We did a couple of more, because it's a women's research company and they're kind of fronted by music. So we lean into the music a lot and the entertainment surrounding music. But we then lent into more of the research stuff and we did some kind of like 5 facts about women's health. And I mean, their usual engagement, you know, that for reels, they'll get like 1,000 to 2,000 views. These ones are consistently at 10K. And it's because of the educational component and the shareability of the content. It's almost like a did you know? And I think that's just another psychological phenomenon that I try and advocate for brands to use is you have to challenge our ego. You know, those videos, those prompts of 5 things you didn't know about so-and-so. Well, that's challenging my ego. You know, I'm saying, I bet you don't know about those 5 things, and I will watch it to try and confirm to my ego that I know those things. Yeah. But by the time you're through 5, they've got you. And that will then get pushed, you know, down the algorithm. So I think things like that people have to be cognizant of is like, are you challenging the ego of the consumer? Because that often will hook them based on their own self-concept, and they want to try and reaffirm that, you know, they want to try and reinforce their positive self-concept. And if you can try and pick at that, then people are then, you know, susceptible to hanging on.
A lot of people do that. A lot of big creators are doing that at some point. And I think some people get really infuriated by it, right? So there's the education. You've
got 2 avenues.
Yeah, there's the education and then there's the entertainment, right?
Right.
Inspiration is like the third piece of the puzzle, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So that's the third door that people start creating content for, right? The Hope Core or whatever else you see on like YouTube and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think there's, you know, I think that's why that one does so well is because you get components of both. Yes. Because you get the authenticity and the entertainment of following the journey, but you also get the educational component of you watching someone do it, and that in itself is its own form of education. So I think that's why, you know, those kind of channels do so well, is because you're actually actively invested. And again, that's just a totally different socially, you know, psychological principle there. You know, this ingratiation component, you grow to like the creator, you like them, and therefore you're invested on this journey. Goggins, and that's why
Goggins is a perfect example of being the inspirator for a lot of people. But most people,
but he's a likable guy,
yeah, exactly.
Right? He's still got that likability, and you know, one of the social psychological principles
authentic.
From Cialdini. Exactly, but ingratiation as a social psychological principle is based on this sense of likability. And if you like someone and they're like you, and I think a lot of the time when I see these gurus, they do a really bad job of trying to elevate themselves above their consumer. But actually what we're seeing in the landscape right now in the industry is the more you can kind of reduce yourself to the same level as your prospective consumer or your community, it goes a lot further. And I think David Goggins has been like, although he's done some unbelievable feats in his life, he's never elevated himself above anyone else. He's always been like, no, actually, like, I just took it a little bit more seriously and I really believed in myself. And you can actually do this too. Like, I'm not any different than you. Whereas I think some of these gurus come at it with this mentality of, I earned $1 million this week and you only earned $100. So you should listen to me. And I'm like, I don't think that's how you build that trust and that ingratiation. So that's why oftentimes it doesn't land.
I love Goggins, and I love the fact that we can do more than one of those, right? You could educate and inspire. You can educate and entertain. You can inspire and entertain. No, there's so many different, there's obviously only a finite amount of choices at the end of the day, but it's interesting to see which people go in specific directions, right? And I've went away from entertainment content because when you start creating more, you don't want to be entertained anymore. You want to be educated. So you can go ahead and educate more people. And this is perfect because it leads into the next question. So YouTube and psychology. Thank you for that explanation though. It was brilliant. Sure. So YouTube and psychology. You're a YouTuber in the past, still kind of am. You did vlogs, docuseries, and weddings, right? So I've seen that.
Yeah.
So first question is, did you incorporate psychological insights into your content early or was it later on? So in your first YouTube video ever, you mentioned your why early, to help as many people as possible. Your buddy Mitch framed your journey in a brilliant way. In a 9 to 5, Jack, you can only help so many people. Creating content, you can help an incredible amount of people. At first, it was to help 100 people. Have you helped 100 people since that first YouTube video from June 4th, 2018? I know you've helped me. What about the other 99?
I hope so. I hope I've, I think for me, there's two things I want to accomplish when you come across me. One is that you feel loved genuinely, and that doesn't mean, romantically. It could mean platonically. And the other one I hope that people feel when they come across me is empowered, and that I truly believe that they can do what they want to do with their life. And I believe that both of those constitutes help. I think we all deserve to be loved, and I think we all deserve to be believed in. And I hope that 99 other people have felt that feeling, because that's really, my go-to in terms of what value I wish to provide others that I come into contact with, even albeit briefly. But in terms of your other question regarding psychology, how it played a role in my YouTube early on, I don't think it was a conscious thing. I don't think I was thinking when I was making those YouTube videos, this is how I'm going to use these psychological principles to my advantage. I think I was making things that felt good to me in the moment, and hopefully able to make other people feel good. And again, if I was trying to lean into these kind of core beliefs of empowering, uplifting, loving others, then hopefully something would click with someone that would provide value. And I only think it was through furthering my education with psychology that I started to learn the names to these things that maybe I was somewhat aware of, but I could finally articulate a little bit better what these underlying principles were that maybe were causing my videos to get some of the traction that they did in the early days.
And they did. When I was kind of going through doing my research on old Jack Wardale, it was
that is old me, by the way.
That is old you.
I have not posted something in a while. Because the thing is, I do a lot of videos these days, and they have these NDAs, right? So you can't always post it. There's some cool things I've been getting up to, but you can't always talk about them because, people are signing these NDAs telling you can't. So it's funny actually if people end up on my YouTube page, they're like, God, you don't really post that much. And I'm like, if only you knew the stuff that I got up to, you would maybe have a different opinion.
You in Georgia, you guys are getting up to a lot. I love the little reels you guys do, especially that Mario Kart one. That one killed me off. I was like, I'm glad he's enjoying his life. Like, it just looked like you guys are enjoying it. So,
yeah, I think, again, the more authentic you can make the content, the more you look like. Because I think there's this facade out there with like the influencer mentality and people kind of just using Instagram as a highlight reel. The more you can just be you and not really play up to these expectations that I think the world puts on us today, I think the further you go and the more buy-in you create. Whereas I see some of these influencers and they just live in a reality that people can't even begin to understand. And when you don't have that connectivity, I think it becomes hard to build a community of people that are really endorsing what you're getting up to.
An audience. It's hard to build an audience if they don't relate to you.
Yeah, right.
So do you ever go back to that first video and like watch it just to see how far you've come?
I don't go back to that video per se. And the main reason I don't is because it makes me cringe a little bit, just because, it was so many moons ago. And I think I was in a position where I really thought I was going to change the world, whatever age I was at the time. And not that I don't hold that same belief in the same essence, but obviously a lot of things have changed, not only in my life, but with my trajectory and where I want to go and how I want to achieve that. But nevertheless, there are videos that I will watch that are still able to give me those same warm emotions. One that just cries out is I did some Disney vlogs with my family. This was years ago now, but I tell you what, if ever I'm missing home, because obviously I'm primarily based in the United States now, I'll pick one of those up and I'll watch them. And I think that's really the power of video. It's this fossilization, I guess, crystallization of a moment and being able to play it back forevermore. I think it's just priceless. So I don't watch necessarily the first one or the first couple because I do cringe at those. But when I do have certain things that I remember, it gives me a great opportunity to watch some of those older videos and really remember those good times.
Sounds like you've been doing video for a long time and for the right reasons, for the intrinsic, the intrinsic rewards of looking back at your life, having the rewards of remembering those moments with your family that they're not going to be around, for the entirety of, time. So it's hard, man, and I feel the same about photography. It's like anytime I'm taking photos, like I got this photo behind me right now, and it is a crystallization of a incredible moment in my life, and it doesn't have to be shared. Like people can look at it and take the art for what they want and take what they want from it. But for me, it's like I know what it is, and it's like, and I just put it out there, so I can kind of echo my creativity as a way of saying I'm here. I existed once. So with videos, it's kind of crazy to think like who's gonna be watching my videos in like 100 years.
I always wonder about that. I'm like, who on earth would watch my videos today? But then I think as equally, and that's why they're still up there, is that I want people to see the journey. Because again, part of this authenticity and this accessibility is you know, gosh, dare I say a thought leader, maybe one day, but just someone that's trying to do the best that they can in this industry. I want people to see that that was how I started. They weren't good videos and they still aren't to an extent, but I tried. And I think you have to put at least 100 bad videos out to get a good one. And as you keep going, that number becomes closer to one. But, even today, I look at a video I've put out and I think could have done a little bit better there. But I think that's what wills us as creators, this air of perfectionism and trying to perfect our craft and be the best that we can be. So I want people to see the old stuff because I think it's just as important and valuable as the new stuff I'm putting out.
So with you signing a lot of these NDAs, I
Mm.
take it you've been working for the past 2 years with Georgia pretty heavily. Like it started to take off for you, didn't it?
Oh yeah, like the stuff I've got up to with her is just crazy. I mean, we're kind of in the process right now because after a certain time, we're kind of allowed to start drip feeding some of the videos out. But I think why I haven't put it on my personal page is because I really want that to be reserved for passion projects for me that are away from, other things, commercial, obligations and stuff. Not because I don't want to show them off. I'd love to, but I think I really want to keep my personal brand separate. I really want to talk about the things
Oh
that are
yeah.
meaningful to me, such as the psychological side of creating, such as the empowerment stuff that I mentioned earlier. I really want to reserve that for my own brand and leave the kind of commercial centric stuff, to the commercial side of what I do. So I think, there will be undoubtedly more videos that go up on that channel. I've got one currently in the works from Iceland. I went on a trip to Iceland in
Saw the
August.
film. Saw the film, dude.
There you go.
The
So,
film shots were dope. They were
I
sick. I
appreciate
was
it.
like, woo. I think that yeah, there was
Thank you,
like
man.
there was an animal in like the second slide. I'm trying to
The sheep,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I was like, dang, it doesn't even look like
yeah.
film. It was just so
Oh,
crisp.
it was crazy. It was like right in front of me. I was like, all right, if you're gonna present me like that, I'm gonna have to take it. But yeah, no, I think there's definitely an opportunity for more videos to go out there. I think right now my focus is really finishing my PhD, and I've almost made this promise to myself that once the PhD is done, and I'm kind of entering this new chapter in my life where I don't have, because people don't realize, when I say I'm doing a PhD, not only am I doing the PhD, I'm doing the research obviously around it. I manage a lab of 50 undergraduate students. I also have classes that I'm still
Hmm.
taking, and then I teach. I teach undergrads as well. So it's not just doing the PhD. There's a lot of different components, and that in and of itself is a full time job. But I have said to myself, as soon as that starts to wind down, which will be next year, I really want to, take that time and invest that into myself and my personal brand. And again, go back to those core principles of trying to show
Yeah.
people that they are loved and that they can do whatever they put their mind to.
Yeah, I've noticed on social media you are not as busy as you once were. You are not like playing the game, but at the same time, like good, like you're doing your own thing.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said also for the quality versus quantity argument
Uh,
as well. I think I look at what's out there in the creator industry right now, and there's so much pressure to post frequently, right? The algorithm favors you,
Dude,
but then
it's a nightmare. It is a
yeah, it
nightmare.
is. And I look at what's being created, and I think, have you compromised your creative process for the algorithm? And I think it's a question that only you as a creator can ask yourself. But something that I will not say I've done is that, I post when I feel I've got something to say. I post when I have the time to say it. And, okay, maybe it's hurt my growth online, and that's something that maybe I'll address down the line. But as of right now, I'm more than content putting out, quality rather than
Hmm.
quantity. I'm not saying that they're mutually exclusive either, but I do think if you play the game too much, there's an opportunity missed to double down on creating a really high quality product because you're so concerned about, did I post today?
Am I gonna
And
get growth? Am I gonna get growth? Like,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And that's the trade. That's the biggest trade-off today as a creator, I think, is where do you sit on that continuum of quality versus quantity? Because although I think you could do both, I think for a lot of creators, if they were to admit it, it would create a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. And I think in that process, do you love it still? When you fall away as part of the algorithm's pressure. So yeah, definitely something I think everyone as a creator needs to introspect occasionally and go, am I doing it for the right reasons? Am I doing it because I'm trying to create a quality product, or am I just doing it because I'm a slave to the algorithm and I just want to grow? And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. But for me and my philosophy right now, it's really I'm prioritizing, high quality, low frequency, and hopefully that's enough for people to stay engaged with what I'm doing.
dude, that's such a nuanced perspective. Like it's so different towards the path that you're taking, right? Or like just what everybody's kind of like pushing right now. So like I did, like you remember me when I was like strictly photography. Now I'm like I've pivoted, dude. I'm going a different route. And a lot of people on Twitter or X as it, they're just they're like, oh well, that's strange. You're not you anymore. But it's like I've changed. We're supposed to change.
Yeah,
So
but you're still yourself.
yeah,
I
exactly.
think that's why whenever I consult with personal brands, I always say, as long as you lead with who you are at your core, you can pivot to whatever you want to do. You're still Zach. And I think as long as you've done a good job of leading with who you are, secondary to like what you can provide value wise, I think people will always follow you around. Like I'll follow you around because I connected with you in a way where I'm just genuinely interested in what you're doing. And if that's, pottery tomorrow, I'll still support you because I support Zach. And I think that's something that creators need to realize is
Yeah,
don't hide behind your art, because if you decide to change that path, it can be quite difficult. And I know that there are creators that feel they're boxed in because they've led with a certain style or a certain medium. They don't maybe have the same affinity
they're
for it
scared to
anymore. And then
quit.
they're like,
They're scared to
they
quit,
are,
man.
they are. It saddens me
Have you read The
because
Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett?
I've not. No, I have been recommended that book.
Okay,
So
yeah. So I don't know. He just talks about quitting and how it's like winners quit because they know when it's time to swap, time to go somewhere else and figure something else out. But I haven't read it yet. I've just kind of listened to a lot of his podcasts, and a lot of times he just talks about his story, and he's refined his story so much to the point where he did have to quit and he did have to go chase something new, and it worked out in the best way possible. Creators nowadays, back to the quality versus quantity, I find that everybody just wants to grow on social media because they believe at the end of like the rainbow, the Twitter growth rainbow, there is like all this money, status associated with it. But likes and followers do not equate to cash. Not all, like sometimes, not always. And so I think that's
yeah.
just what people are caught up in is they're so maybe potentially unhappy in their life. They want to change. They want some sort of freedom that they see these other creators have, but they're not really grateful for what they do have and the ability to be able to create content or the ability to pursue their passions and interact with like-minded individuals like yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you're talking to someone that's studying gratitude at the
Yeah.
PhD level, so like, I can tell you all about that. Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think for a lot of people, it's important to iterate because we change, right? We grow,
Yeah.
we learn, we develop, and I think that forces iteration. And I can't remember where I saw it or listened to it, but someone made a case about there's a difference between failing and losing. Failing is part of life,
Yeah.
right? We all fail, but losing is making a conscious decision to turn your back on something. And I think what I've learned being an entrepreneur is that failure is part of life. Failure is something that you are going to stare in the face every day. But it's your conscious decision to keep pivoting and moving forward that will afford you success. And I think that it's the perseverance that makes the success in an individual. And like you said, spotting opportunities, choosing to pivot where you feel necessary. You may pivot again, and that's absolutely fine. For me, that's a way of you owning that you've developed and you've grown, and that you've felt that maybe you've outgrown something, or that you've seen an opportunity that's better for you elsewhere. And I just don't like the culture that's been brought about regarding failure in society. I think it's such a negative connotation. And if we can try and reframe that to suggesting that we all fail, failure is inevitable, it's how you deal with that failure is ultimately going to have the impact that you want. So I think more conversations need to be had about failure in general, because too many people are scared of it. I am still scared of it, being truthful.
It's
But
like the publish button phobia, because they believe
yeah,
if their content flops, then they're a failure.
oh my
So,
goodness. And I've had that.
oh,
And maybe
same.
that's, a
Absolutely.
reason why I haven't posted as much, because I have a standard, and I'm so worried about how is my audience going to perceive this piece of content. But my goodness, have you got to get over it? So yeah, I think it's something we all have to remind ourselves.
It is. And we're constantly, battling with imposter syndrome if we're changing a lot and failing a lot. But those failures are kind of what allow us to level up in the real world. Things don't necessarily get easier, but we just get better at what we do. So for
For
me,
sure.
like, yeah, dude, I've developed a writing habit for almost a year and a half now, since the kind of the end of the NFT space, I would say, because I
Hmm.
felt everybody felt it kind of fall off. You remember that?
Definitely.
It was just like, whoa, there's a completely different energy. I think it was when Russia decided to invade Ukraine in 22. Like,
Yeah,
you remember that? Like, I think that
definitely.
changed a lot. There was like this energy about the world that was just like quiet.
Yeah.
It was just like this is reality, and
Hmm.
sometimes there's a lot of factors of the outside world that are just completely out of our control. But you
For
have
sure.
to, regardless of the algorithm, you just have to choose: are you a creative because you like to create, or do you create for status and these other extrinsic reasons, money? So
Yeah.
a creative is going to create regardless of the time that they are living in and the hardships
Hmm.
they're going through. It's a way to battle and embrace this challenge of life. So before we're at about, maybe I think 40 minutes now, something like that.
Hmm.
I know your time is valuable, so I wanted to ask you one last question before we hop off the
Sure.
call. What does creativity mean to you, Jack?
Whoa, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I should have prepared an answer for this one. What does
Off the
what does
dome.
creativity for me, and this is strictly for me, this is not my overall philosophy on
Okay.
creating. I think creativity for me is the ability to speak to oneself, understand oneself, and give that gift to the world.
Wow.
Because I think part of my creative process has been understanding who I am. And as a consequence of that, what gift can I give to the world? Because I think at the end of the day, creating is creating something from nothing. And I think if we strip it all back, all we have is ourselves as our reference point. So if we can introspect enough and think hard enough about who we are, what we're doing, and we can kind of package that and deliver that to the world, I think that's what creativity is.
It's a beautiful answer. Like, I've been asking people this a lot just because it's really interesting to hear what everybody has to say. And so thank you for sharing that, even if it was like completely like,
It
should have
was
given
off
you
the
some time.
cuff.
No,
No, no,
it
it
was
was
great,
off
man.
the cuff. I
You're
tried to
good
make
at
it
the
as poetic
improv,
as
man.
possible for you.
You're good at the
Yeah, there we
improv.
go.
So everyone, this is Jack Wardale. Jack has been a dear friend of mine for a bit, so I'm really glad I can get him on the podcast as my third guest. This is episode number 7, and check it out. I will link Jack's socials down below. He's got some work. I mean, obviously you heard that he's not really posting too much, but big things in the future for Mr. Wardale here, and maybe follow Georgia too. She's probably a little bit more consistent than
Definitely
Jack.
follow Georgia. She is on it when it comes to social media. I am not. I am trying to be a facilitator. So I will be more apparent. And just because I'm not active doesn't mean you can't reach out. I think something else that I'll leave you with, Zach, is if there's anyone that's listening to this and they're kind of in a boat where they're liking the idea of creating, they don't really know what to do or where to go. I'm always open DMs, as you know, Zach, when we kind of converse back in the NFT days. My philosophy is still the same. If I can be someone to mentor anyone about creative stuff, I would love the opportunity, because I didn't have a mentor myself. So if I can give that gift to anyone who's maybe listens to this and feels like they don't quite know where they're going in the creative world, or more general than that, feel free to hit me up and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Powerful insights from Jack here. He's definitely been one of those creatives that's helped shape my future, and I always remember it. So I'm super grateful to you, man. It's just it's those little things, those little statements, those little things of encouragement, and just be like, just get your head out of your ass. Like, you know what you need to do.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone needs to hear that today.
Oh yeah. Well, man, it's been much love, and everybody, go check Jack out. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate it. Creative Insights with Jack Wardale.
Thanks, man.